Hey friends, we are PhysicsMathMan and LuminousInverse, and this week we will cover Raging Thunderkeg, the Storm Spirit's abilities, role, and item choices. Storm is a ranged intelligence hero that is all about traveling a large distance over a short period of time. He uses his insane mobility power to bypass terrain and pick off the heroes he wants to. Dangerous at every point of the game, Storm is a high skill cap and one of the most unique heroes in the entire game. As usual, let's begin by discussing his abilities. Static Remnant drops a glowing image of Storm. After 1 second of delay, an enemy that gets close will cause it to explode, dealing damage in a small AoE around it. The remnants can persist for 12 seconds, meaning you can have a maximum of 3 up at any time. It should also be noted that all remnants give a small amount of flying vision. His second ability, Electric Vortex, tangles an enemy hero in a stun that simultaneously pulls them towards Storm. During the vortex, Storm Spirit receives a 50% movement slow debuff, meaning he cannot vortex and walk away very easily. The third move, Overload, is what jacks this hero's DPS up significantly. Whenever Storm casts one of his other spells, he receives a buff that makes his next successful, non-building auto attack do bonus damage, deal a small splash AoE, and very briefly slow the enemy's movement and attack speed. Note that the buff is added the instant the spell is cast, meaning if one of your auto attacks is already mid-air, it will receive the buff. His ultimate, Ball Lightning, is what makes this hero relevant, scary, and unique. This zero cooldown spell lets Storm Spirit use a percentage of his mana pool for jumps. If an enemy intersects with your path as you zip, he will receive an amount of damage calculated from the distance of the roll. More importantly, Ball Lightning can be used to disjoint many spells and auto attacks. Not only does this spell act as Storm's initiation, but it lets him constantly reposition. Keep in mind that you can attack, use all your spells, and use all your items while in Ball Lightning form. There are 2 ability progressions common to Storm Spirit: the ganking Vortex build and the farming oriented Remnant build. In every case, you'll want to maximize Overload by level 7 because it's the easiest way to control a lane, have high DPS when budgeting mana, and have some kill potential. For the Vortex build, it is common to only level it up to 3 levels because it is enough to pull most enemies into a Remnant. The Remnant build really aims to obtain early items by flash farming, but kills can still be obtained by skillful zips and Remnant placements. Always skill your ultimate when possible. A general tip to Storm is using Overload every chance during ganks. The most basic and efficient combo for Storm Spirit goes as follows. Number 1, Ball Lightning on top of the enemy and hit them with an Overload charge. Number 2, Electric Vortex the same enemy and then hit them with the resulting Overload charge from that. Number 3, put a Remnant down and hit them with Overload yet again. And number 4, keep using Ball Lightning and hitting them with the resulting Overload charges until they're dead. This guide will cover a mid-semi-carry Storm Spirit, which is where he is most commonly played. Early game Storm is when he is the most frail, susceptible to ganks and not able to handle too much damage in lane because of his small health capacity. Because of this, your first goal will be to obtain a bottle. Against stronger mid opponents, aggressively Remnant to last hit, and when possible, try to hit your lane opponent with the Overload auto attacks. Be sure to constantly keep your map awareness up, because your life will get much simpler the moment you reach level 6, so you need to stay alive as a priority. Early game Storm can really get business done when he gets the correct runes, so push the lane before the rune spawns. If you're finding it dangerous to obtain runes, Bottle Crowing is usually a must. As soon as you obtain level 6, your mana pool is the most important factor at all times. Also, understand that your Bottle and Soul Ring is an extension of your mana pool. Against heroes with unreliable disables or very long delayed casting animations, Storm can get solo kills if he has a full mana pool. A final note on the early game is to stack jungle camps whenever possible, whether it be you or a support. This is because the combination of Static Remnant and Overload proved to be ridiculously good at clearing camps. This will skyrocket your farm. Mid-game Storm starts when you obtain your first mana-oriented item, usually Orchid Malevolence or Bloodstone. At this point, you can do the most for your team by grabbing kills. Teleport to lanes where you can pick off opponents and be sure to conserve your mana as much as possible. This means you want to try and minimize your ball lightning movements. You must be careful at this point as you are very squishy and a single stun or silence can be your end. If the team has a lot of disables, sometimes it's better to counter initiate instead of initiate. After a gank, you will be too drained of mana to go for a full round 2, so use this time to farm the jungle as you meander your way back to base to fill up and gank once more. Most players go wrong during this stage of the game because they don't understand how quickly ball lightning can get you from point A to point B, which differs depending on the level of ball lightning you have. So our recommendation is to go to a practice lobby and get familiar with the long range zips. After obtaining several big items, your mana conservation becomes less of a worry. At this point, you can flash farm extremely quickly and have the mana pool to support long zips, which sometimes cover nearly half the map. When in teamfights, jump onto key targets, such as supports with disables, as you can easily make mincemeat of them with your superior mobility and items. Even though in the late game you might start to feel invincible with all your items from flash farming, keep in mind your enemies will start to have multiple ways to lock you down. So despite your kill and item lead, recognize you're still very vulnerable to a good chain stun. A final note is that Storm Spirit is one of the game's best, if not the best, Aegis carriers in the game, so make a good point of securing Roshan after key fights throughout the mid and late game. I'm going to go over a standard stored game and talk about my item choices. I begin with a circlet and a branch for an eventual wand, and I impuled a tango in order to obtain a very quick bottle, which I can guarantee with remnant spam. After grabbing the first bounty rune, I know I can play aggressive, and I push the wave against Invoker, making sure to hit him with all my overload charges. The bottle arrives extra early, and I make Invoker sad by bullying the lane with disadvantage. All the while, I appropriately keep tabs on the timer and push the wave in order to grab the rune when it spawns. In between clearing the mid lane, I hop over to the jungle and farm/stack camps. This increases my GPM and inches me closer to that first pivotal item. Upon getting a few levels, I decide to go for the Vortex build. This means I should keep in the fog more often than not, and if possible try and snag some kills. I find one on Invoker. After this kill, I'm too low on mana to comfortably stay in lane, let alone gank. So I farm the jungle on my way back to the fountain for regeneration. A fight breaks out while I'm filling up. I grab a port and immediately see if I can counter-initiate on the fight that's already half over. I am able to clean up a single kill, securing the tier 1 tower. This gives me enough gold for an Orchid. I am now in my mid-game and seek kills out non-stop. Let me take time to note that items like Orchid and Bloodstone are particularly good on Storm. Although his ultimate cost is a hybrid of flat and percentage-based mana, it is mostly a percentage factor of his mana pool that matters. So you want items that have a large mana regen while adding little intelligence. However, do note that a bigger mana pool is still needed to do long range zips later in the game. The Bloodstone is also really nice because you can respawn quickly and get back into fights immediately with Ball Lightning. But let's get back to the game. I keep my eyes open on the map all the time for Orchid kills whenever possible. Here I grab Pudge. I push a tower since nobody on their team can really lock me down at this point. Jug is stupid anyway and wastes his ult on me. After a short skirmish in our favor, we use Bristleback's ability to kill Roche fast, which gets me an Aegis. Remember, I'm arguably the best Aegis carrier in the game. Picking up Storm Spirit's favorite rune, I spot the carry jug up top trying to get some farm. Bold with the Aegis, I decide to go for a kill. Later on, we win a team fight because I am able to utilize the Aegis and finish off 4 of the enemies. With superior map control, we outfarm them, and I make sure to not let anybody walk up to a wave without paying for it. With superior farm, we push into the base and finally finish the game. As usual, time to wrap up with 3 Storm Spirit takeaways. Number 1. Aggressively use your remnants to last hit and use overload to lane control. Be extremely wary of ganks before you hit level 6. Number 2. Never miss an overload attack. Since the extra right click can mean a kill or the enemy barely running away, make sure you always use an overload attack. Number 3. No matter what stage of the game it is, your opponents are going to throw their stuns and silences at you, so get good at using your zips to disjoint them if they are able to be disjointed. Storm Spirit is a menacing high skill cap hero who can single-handedly disassemble an entire team as he snowballs into scary amounts of mana regen and farm. Hard to catch and annoying as hell, in the right hands you simply cannot be angry because after all, he told you a storm was coming. Hey guys, PhysicsMathMan here from Relax You're Fine. Hope you enjoyed the guide, and as always, see you next Wednesday.